Can everybody hear me in the back? All right. Well, thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Dave. And thank you guys for showing up to chat with me tonight. You know, like she said, I am a graduate of Clemson University. Graduated in 1999. I was a member of the Spiro Center, Spiro program. And I can't say enough about what this university did for me and my career, and how the lessons I learned in Spiro really helped shape my personal brand and how I took that into the workplace. So today, you know, I'm going to just share a little bit about, you know, what I went through and what I've gone through in my career. But I really want to talk about, you know, some of the basic things about branding and how us as individuals can turn that into growth for ourselves throughout our career. So the topic's really going to be, what is your brand? And first thing we'll talk about is why is a brand important? And it's pretty simple. People buy them. People pay money for brands. Nobody wants clear cola. Nobody. People pay for Coca Cola. You don't walk into Target and buy a shirt that says clear cola on it. The only time you buy clear cola is if you have to. You know, maybe you lost a bet with a Gamecock friend and you owe them a Coke, so you buy them a clear cola instead. So people pay for brands because they're valuable. They mean something. Verizon, they're our largest client, and their brand is valued at $43 billion, which is about, and they're just a domestic brand. They're not even a worldwide brand. And Coke is $73 billion, and that's about half of their, you know, market value. I think they're valued at about $160 billion, and they attribute almost half of their value just to the Coke brand, just to the logo. And I think the best way to really think about that is if the market was going to go out and buy Coke tomorrow, but they had to put the clear cola label on it, what would they pay for it? They wouldn't pay $160 billion. All they'd pay is about, you know, half of that. So these things are tremendously valuable, and they mean something to people. So this idea of branding is powerful for companies, and they spend a lot of money to develop them, but it's also valuable for people. And I think one of the simplest ways to think about this, I know when I was in your shoes and I was getting ready to maybe go out in the job market, is it's competitive out there. You know, we're a 280-person shop here in Greenville. We got another 100-person group up in New York. And we have about 10 job openings right now, and we get over 200 applicants a week for those positions. And we're just one employer. So it's pretty competitive. And for some of the entry-level positions, that's what takes up a majority of those. So branding yourself now, and as you enter the marketplace, can help differentiate yourself from those other 200 applicants a week. And my wife actually does the recruiting for Erwin-Penland, so she sees them stream in. And if you can differentiate yourself and start building a brand now and take that with you, you know, it can help you out, especially in an economy like this. So let's talk a little bit about a brand. What is a brand? You know, it's a logo, yes. It might be a color scheme or a name, but it's really a perception that gets built up in people's minds that sets an expectation. So when you see a BMW logo, you come to expect something. You know, when you see a Verizon logo, you expect, you know, the network's fast, it's available, it's not gonna crud out on me, except during game day maybe. So it sets a tone. And for an individual, when you walk into a room, if you're in the workforce and you walk into a meeting, if you have a brand, you're gonna set an expectation. And people are gonna expect something of you. You know, and that can be a lot of things. It can be good, and it can be not so good. But if you can control that expectation, and you can control what people expect of you, you can do a lot of really great things with that, just like brands. So when most people think about brands, they think about, you know, the Cokes, the Verizons, but people are brands too. And I think nowhere is this more evident. I think sports, you got Ochocinco. Anybody that changes their last name to the number of their jersey is definitely a brand. And what's funny about him is I think almost more than any other athlete, his personal branding, I mean, he's all over social media, he's tweeting, he had a big tweet this week that set off a controversy. He's probably increased his value through his personal branding efforts in terms of marketing endorsements more than through his play on the field. So all the things he's done outside of, you know, the field of play and just the product he puts out there, he's actually increased his value as a personal brand and more people know him. Lady Gaga, I call her Lady Meat Dress Gaga because she definitely set that perception and that expectation in my mind with that one instance. So you see it a lot in celebrities. They have a brand, you expect something, and they spend a lot of money to build that. And then Steve Jobs, I think from a business perspective, you have to look at him when you talk about personal brands. I think he's sort of our generation's Jack Welch or Getty or Warren Buffett or something like that. I don't know, many of you might not even know those names. I was talking to some of the people in my office today, and who's Jack Welch? Who's Jack Welch? So Steve Jobs is definitely a personal brand. And when you think about him, you think visionary. He's a visionary. I mean, look at all the news when he, decided to step down from Apple. What influence did he have? It was huge. Because he has such a strong personal brand. He means so much, meticulous to details, technological advancement. He means a lot because he's done a lot with his career, but he's also built a strong, consistent personal brand. So what makes a good brand and what makes a strong brand? Brands have an identity and they stand for something. They mean something and it is clear. There is no, not knowing what a strong brand stands for. Weak brands, they don't really stand for anything. As an individual, there's so many people out there that just sort of float in the mix. And they're kind of in that mushy middle, right? They don't stand for something. And I think as important as standing for something is great brands know what they're not. They say, I am not this. I'll look at Hardee's, right? If you look at their advertising as a brand, they are 100% targeted at young men, right? And they say, you know what, we are not gonna go healthy and we're not gonna really target the female demographic. We are squarely focused on this segment and we are not this because they don't wanna dilute what makes them unique and what makes them special. And that's important to consider about yourself, right? Who are you? And as important, who are you not? Because you can't be something you're not, especially once you get into the workforce and you start building your career and you start trying to get a job, you got to be authentic because you'll get sniffed out otherwise. And that's how brands are today too. I mean, you can't have a company proposing to be one thing. If they say they're safe for the environment and then you find out that they're doing all this pollution or something, people aren't gonna spend money on that brand anymore, right? Because they stood for something and they were true to it. Strong brands have strong roots. And usually when you look at great brands, they all came from somewhere, right? And it comes from within them. I was having dinner earlier this week with Steve from Firefly Vodka, who's a distillery down in Charleston, and they make Firefly sweet tea vodka. And he was telling me about their story, and how, sweet tea is just this drink of the South. He said, we drink sweet tea like it's milk, right? And he wanted to do something with that, and he wanted to take this uniquely Southern product and do something with it. And he had a friend that, distilled spirits, and they made Firefly sweet tea vodka. And they made it all about the South. The name, Firefly, it came from when he was a boy and he was collecting fireflies in a jar, out back in his house. And it was a memory he had growing up and something that meant something to him inside of him that he decided to build this, company around. And they've taken off. They're the #1 sweet tea vodka brand, and they basically started the sweet tea vodka trend right here in Charleston, South Carolina, which is pretty awesome stuff. So they come from somewhere, right? And so, as an individual, when you're looking at developing your personal brand, that's your ammo, right? Where you came from, what you liked to do when you were a kid, Do you like to draw? Do you like to play sports? Do you like to play video games? Or, whatever it was, that's what you draw on as an individual when you're sort of building your personal brand a little bit, I look at my own life and my own career, and I used to sell pumpkins out of a wagon. I grew up in New England. And we grew pumpkins, and I'd sell them out of a wagon at the end of my driveway. So my dad knew I was going to kind of be in business, from a very young age. I was totally into technology, loved computers, played on computers from the second we had one. But I also, had a little bit of a creative side. I liked drawing, I liked art class, and I liked things like that. And so, throughout my career, I sort of got into advertising. Right out of Clemson, decided to come here. I was a business major, a marketing major to tap into that. And then I got my first job in advertising to sort of combine that creative side with business, which was really cool. And at the time, it was 1999, 2000, and the dot-com boom was sort of going on, and it was kind of coming off and going into the bust phase. But at the time, advertising agencies didn't really play a whole lot in the digital and technology realm. They were mostly print ads and TV spots and radio ads and things like that. And I saw an opportunity to tap into something else, that technology passion I had when I was a kid, and said, hey, we're an advertising agency. This technology thing's going to be big, I promise. So why don't we really kind of form a technology marketing division? And they gave me the power to do that, and they let me form Erwin-Penland's digital practice, and to do websites, to do banner ads, search engine marketing, social media, and it's blossomed. And if you are a marketing or advertising agency in this day and age, you better be able to do digital marketing. It's table stakes now. But that came, in my personal journey to discover that, came from who I was in this unique combination of things that I brought to the table. And I was able to position that within the company, and they said, okay, Kevin's the digital guy. Go to him. You have any questions about that, start going to him. And over time, we've grown and grown and grown and grown. And it's been tremendously successful. So you really need to look inside yourself and look at those things that make you different, and look at your personal roots to decide how your brand is going to be and what you're going to stand for. Strong brands are consistent. Everything that you do, every action that you take as a brand says something about it. And they do it across the board. Apple is consistent with everything. Everything you look at, it's Apple. Their product development, their marketing, their customer service, every single touch point is consistent. You can't be your brand some of the time. You can't turn it off and on like a faucet. You have to be a brand all of the time, or else you're going to be kind of found out a little bit. So Erwin-Penland, we're a brand, and we actually just yesterday created a new logo, and this is the new logo. And I'll tell you a little story about it and what it means, and it really speaks to that very point. And you got the sort of the E in the middle, and the outside forms the P in Penland, and it's a conversation bubble. And conversation bubbles were used, in cartoons and stuff when somebody said something, when they spoke or when they said something. And as an agency, our job is to make sure everything that our clients do says the right things about their brand. Everything. What does their website look like? What is their TV spot? What impression does it give? What's their product experience like? When you walk into a store and look around, when you walk into a Verizon store and look around, do they look like a technology leader? Or do they just kind of look like a utility company? Somebody that, you pay a bill to every, month. All of the touch points are important. So when we created this logo, it was kind of based on that idea that everything you do says something about you. Every single action you take, what you wear, who you know, what you say, the clubs you join, the clubs you don't join, everything, every single touch point influences the total package. And in this day and age with multiple mediums and mobile and online and offline, every single channel is important. Everything is important. There's a stat I saw the other day. 52% of web-savvy consumers who have a bad experience online are less likely to shop from that brand again in an offline channel. And this speaks to the point that as a brand, you have to be it everywhere. If somebody, it's the same for mobile. Somebody has a bad, mobile site, you go to order some Domino's, which has a great mobile site, by the way, but it's a crappy experience. You don't want to go into a Domino's, Everything has an effect on all of the other channels and all the other areas of a brand. So again, as an individual, it's all important. Every single thing that you do or don't do says something and makes a difference. So let's talk a little bit about selling your brand. So let's say that you've kind of developed your brand and you got a good idea of who you are and what you want to do and what you want to bring to the table as an individual. How do you sell it, right? Because a brand's no good if you're not getting the word out and you're not selling it. Very first step is really finding your fit. And in marketing and advertising, we call it, defining your target audience. Who are you going to market your brand to? Because not everybody is right for everything. You can't be everything to all people. So you got to find your fit. Otherwise, it's not going to be good for yourself. It's not going to be good for who you're trying to sell it to. So one of our clients is Michelin, and they have a portfolio of brands. Michelin, is the most noteworthy. BF Goodrich Tires is another one, and then they have another brand called Uniroyal. And every single brand plays a unique role in their portfolio. They each serve a purpose, and they each target very, very different people. BF Goodrich is sort of their performance brand. They sell some regular passenger car tires and things like that, but their bread and butter is really performance tires. And they sell to tuners, they sell to people that take these things, rock climbing and things like that, big mudder Jeep tires. And they know who their customer is. If they tried to sell one of these to, a soccer mom driving a minivan, number one, she'd be pissed because the treadwear, is going to be like 20,000 miles on it, and then all the tuners are going to see a minivan mom driving around with BF Goodrich, and they're going to be like, I don't want that, It's like Facebook, All you guys are leaving Facebook because old people like us are getting on it, right? So you got to find a good fit, and you got to know who your target is, because you might piss off your core customers. So, again, for individuals, you're going to be tempted when you leave here to just get a job. It doesn't matter where it is, just get a job, right? I almost went to work for a stock brokerage house call center up in Charlotte, and thank goodness I turned it down. Thank goodness, because I don't know what path that would have taken me on. I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I didn't want. So as you guys, get ready to graduate, whether you're going to go into the work world or you're going to, start your own company, know what you want, know where your fit is going to be, and don't just settle for getting a job. You might have to, but know that's what it is. And don't lose track of where your true fit is going to be. You'll want to just get paid, I promise you. And I don't blame you either. But I tell you what, that, focusing on that and making sure that you know what's going to be a good match is going to pay off in the long term. So, what are some tools to do that? How do you find out, what's going to be a good fit? For us in marketing, we have all sorts of tools. We pay lots of money for licensing to tools like ComScore and Nielsen Netmetrics to understand target audiences and know, what demographics do what and how likely they are to buy certain things, and what media channels do they watch, and are they on mobile, are they not on mobile. But we don't have those things necessarily as individuals. But you do have a lot, and you have a lot more than what we had when we were leaving into the job world. I know Bobby and folks like him and I were leaving. The internet was just getting started, but you guys have tremendous amount of tools available. And things like LinkedIn and social media. You can find out so much about people and companies through social media. We were joking right before this. Dave asked if somebody brought me a gin and tonic, and I said, no, I'm a bourbon guy. And I thought about it for a second, and if you probably spied on me for about 3 or 4 days on social media, you'd probably know I was a bourbon guy. So you can research people, you can research companies, you can see how happy the people in those companies are, you can see what they do, you can see what their title is, you can see where they went to school, you can see what their career path looked like. You can learn so much now that you couldn't years ago. So as you're developing your brand and you're trying to find your fit, social media is a great way to kind of get the lay of the land, to see what's out there and to see what people are like and to see what jobs are like. Wikipedia, I'll be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about advertising when I was in school. I didn't really know what it was. I knew TV commercials, but that's it. I didn't know about the job functions within the business. I didn't know, what the career paths were like. And, you can go and spend like 20 minutes on Wikipedia and learn what probably took me a year to learn about the ad business, very, very, very quickly. And you can do this about any business, any industry. You can find out who the major players are. You can find out what the work is like. You can read the trade rags. For us, Ad Week, Ad Age, Ad Rants. You can get a good feel of what it's like in any business, in any industry, And that stuff matters, and that stuff helps. Because how else are you going to know where you're going to fit, right? You got to get an idea, and you can do internship programs, which is huge, to get some experience and understand what that's going to be like. So as you chart your course as an individual and as a brand, you have a good idea what you're getting into. So the next step is, you sort of have defined who you are and the roots that kind of shape your brand and your brand's package. And you kind of know what area you might want to get into or who your target audience is. How do you get your story out there and how do you tell your story? Like I said, we had 200 applicants a week and 99% of them are a black and white resume. So that's your competition, which is pretty good if I was in your shoes because you should be able to beat the crap out of that. Now, if you had lots of money, like $2.4 million, you could run a Super Bowl spot like GoDaddy and tell the world about yourself, right? But if you had $2.4 million, you probably wouldn't be worried about getting a job. At least I wouldn't be. So what do you have to do? Have a presence. We talked about, social media from a, research standpoint to understand things and understand target audiences and where you might be a good fit. But you need to have a presence too. And the presence you do have matters because employers look at it. They will Google you and they will try to learn stuff about you. But it's a huge opportunity. There's a service called Tumblr, and it's like the simplest blog you can absolutely imagine. And we had a guy who spent some time and was a graduate of the VCU Brand Center. And when he was looking for a job, he had a Tumblr account. And all he did with his Tumblr account was put down ideas. He had business ideas, or he had commentary about what he thought about business. And he'd just write them down. He'd share links that he thought were cool. And he sent his resume in, and he posted, he's a business guy, and most people think like portfolios are for artists or musicians. But business students, they can have portfolios too. You guys do projects, they have presentations and PowerPoints and white papers and all that stuff. You can merchandise that stuff online, and you can present it like a portfolio. So here's a business guy who's an account planner, and he sent us this website that had projects he had done about brand studies. I remember it was Hamilton Beach, and he did this whole breakdown about, high-end kitchen stuff and blenders and things like that. And he had this blog of just ideas, and some of them were just crazy, harebrained ideas. But what it told me and what it told people at our business is this guy, he's an idea guy, right? He likes ideas. He's constantly coming up with ideas. And that's what our clients pay us for. They pay us for ideas. They pay us for knowledge. So having a presence on Tumblr. Twitter, again, super easy to do. You can share links, especially if you're trying to get into advertising, social media, anything like that. That's sort of something that you can do to show that you're in the space, and what you talk about matters. If I see that you just tweeted about, a new campaign that broke or something like that, I say, that person's plugged in. They get it, right? So I start shaping my expectation of you as a brand. Number one, you've done something different that not everybody does. It's not just a black and white resume you're trying to, submit through our website. You're kind of going the extra mile. Get a profile on LinkedIn. I promise you it will pay off. Connect with people. Connect with people here. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's a huge, huge social media tool for building your brand. So building connections. I can't stress this enough, and frankly, I'm really impressed that all of you guys, showed up on a Thursday night. I know you're sacrificing happy hour to come here. But this is huge, and starting to build connections now, and don't overlook connections with each other. Because some of you are going to be CMOs or CEOs or COOs someday. I guarantee it. You're going to be presidents of companies, big, small, whatever. And you're going to want to know each other. I'm going to want to know you. If you're a CMO, I'm going to want to know you. So don't overlook that either. Build connections with people in the community, with your teachers, with business leaders. Connect with them and start a conversation. And then build that relationship. It's not just enough to connect. You have to start cultivating a relationship. You don't like companies, you don't want to work with companies that treat you like a number. Okay, you're my customer now. I'm going to just expect you to show up in my store and I'm going to serve you pizza or whatever. No, you got to share the love a little bit, right? You got to talk with them. You got to, send them a happy birthday or whatever. It's important. Start to build that relationship. You start to build that conversation. It's going to just enhance your ability to market and sell your brand. And again, when we talked about everything that you say kind of totals up to what your brand is, who you know really matters. And if, somebody like Bobby, if he endorses you, I'm going to build a certain expectation. Say, okay, Bobby's a credible guy in my opinion. So I'm going to trust, your reputation. It's funny, it's how Google ranks sites in search, right? If you have a site all about tires and you have a bunch of enthusiast blogs linking to your site about tires, Google is going to say, man, they're credible, right? They're credible because they've got this, technological relationship with all of these brands that I see are credible. It's the same thing with people in networking. So you got to build those connections in order to market your brand. Again, unless you got $2.4 million and you can run a Super Bowl spot. So, let's say you've kind of gone through the motions. You've got a good, you've got your roots sort of established. You know who you are. You think you got an idea of your brand. You found a good place to work or a good business to start. You land a job there. The branding doesn't stop. It's really just sort of beginning now. So next it becomes a process of continuing to evolve your brand. What are you now and what are you going to become? And the way we like to look at it at Erwin-Penland is every single person in our company is an entrepreneur. And they're in an independent economic entity of one, that has complete control over their own destiny. And that's how I built my career. We said, we're going to do this digital thing, and they let me grow it and build it and build it and build it. And we have 10 people and 20 people and 30 people and then 40 people in the group. So it's like a little company within a company. So even if you're not sitting here saying, I'm going to go out and start my own business, and I'm going to go be the next, Facebook or Google or Groupon or whatever, you can still be an entrepreneur and you can still build that brand once you get into a company or an organization. So it's really an evolution process. And really the last thing that I want to leave you guys with, because I think it's really important, and I just want to reiterate it and say it, is everything matters. I talked about it earlier. Everything you say, everything you do, and everything a brand does matters, and it says something. So when you go out and you start talking to people and networking and building your relationships, just think about that. Think about that, because it's critical, and it affects everything you do, everywhere you go. That's it. It starts I think recruitment starts in January. Last year we had a website, I think it was called like 8specialcookies.com or something that you can apply, but you can go to erwinpenland.com, and it's, there's sort of an application process. We'll ask you to, submit, your name and stuff like that, but we're going to ask you some questions. And based on the answers to those questions, we kind of evaluate you, and then we'll come and give you a paid internship for the summer. So start looking around January, and just shoot us a line, and we'll put you in the mix. Yeah.
My question to you is just, you talked about how consistency really matters, and you talked about how everything really matters. But my question is relating to, you said personal branding, you want to keep evolving that. How do you maintain consistency longer?
Well, it's a great question, because you sort of want to chart a course, right? You want to chart a course in the general direction you want to go, but the first thing that almost any business person will tell you is the only constant is change, right? And if you don't evolve, then you're probably, going to become irrelevant. So what you have to do is look at what is consistent about your brand. What are the things that are unchangeable? And I look at our industry, advertising and marketing, and I'll use that as an example, because when technology came and social media came, everybody's like, social media is changing the world, it's changed everything, you gotta do this, and you gotta be on Twitter and Facebook and all this stuff. TV's dead. And that's really not the case, right? Marketing is marketing, and it's about persuading people to act. And that hasn't changed, okay? It's still about that. So as a company, for us, that's still our brand, and our mission is about persuading people to act. But we got to recognize that it has changed the way people go about things now. So we had to say, hey, we've got to do this digital stuff. It hasn't changed our core course or our core direction as a company and as a brand. We're not going to go abandon TV. It'd be crazy. We're not going to stop running newspaper ads or radio or things like that. So you kind of fall back, and what's interesting is you start distilling down, what really matters, and you'll find that stuff doesn't really change, It's all the stuff around it that changes. So now, I will say that some companies reinvent themselves, and they do it pretty well. I talked about Hardee's a little bit. You know, they did a great job reinventing themselves. They said, hey, we're going to be about burgers. They used to be a chicken and breakfast place. And they said, you know what, we're going full bore with burgers. And they sort of reinvented their company, and they've done pretty well with that. I think better than they would have if they hadn't evolved. This is a great question. It's hard to do.
What are your thoughts on grad school, especially for undergrad marketing?
Well, you know what, it's interesting because I don't really care where you kind of come from. As an employer for me, and I'm giving you my personal opinion, I don't care. I've hired people with GEDs. So it's about, again, your brand and how committed you are to something. And if you've shown the goods, like I hired a developer, he's a programmer, and you know, he got a GED from high school, he didn't go to college, but he was brilliant, right? Brilliant developer, so I hired him, okay? Now, if you want to go to grad school because you think it's going to contribute to something that you believe in, I say go for it, man. Go for it. Because if that's going to become part of your brand, you know, roll it in, you know, and it's a great accomplishment, you know. But personally, you know, as an employer, you know, I'm gonna sort of meet you, look in your eyes, and we're gonna talk shop a little bit. If you can talk with me and we can have a conversation about the industry, the business, where it's going, that's what I'm gonna look for. Now, but that, I guess that depends on what, you know, area of emphasis are you in? Are you marketing, management? Yeah, so, and you can learn a lot, you know, in an MBA program or a grad program. Dave was telling me about the Spiro Center. They're starting an MBA program, 25 students. I was a member of the ELE program when I was here, and it did wonders for me. Really helped shape my perspective and my story, you know, because I was competing against, you know, marketing students, and I was able to tell this whole story about, it's about entrepreneurialism, and it's about, you know, having a broad, diverse perspective around the world around you and treating your, you know, your job like it's your own company. So I was able to tell that story. And if you're going to have a grad school and it's going to contribute to that story, do it. But if you just want the letters or something like that, some companies might value it. But if it adds to your story, then it can be a great thing. In the back.
My name is Dalton Chester, I'm a finance major, and seeing you in ELE, what are your suggestions and tips for an elevator pitch?
An elevator pitch for ELE?
No, just in general.
So I'm trying to understand your question a little bit. What are my tips for giving an elevator pitch? Okay. Make your point quickly. An elevator pitch is basically if you got an elevator ride with somebody and you need to tell them about yourself or your business or anything, you got that amount of time to do it.
They have marketing people that go to elevators to sell people on
Other questions?
And what else?
I didn't introduce myself before. My name is Ruben. I'm a freshman. That's why I wanted to do that.
Great.
But my question is that, as an advertising agency, how important is it to find companies that you as a company believe in as far as the product they're selling versus finding a company you just think will be successful?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, it is much easier to sell something you believe in than something you don't. Because all great ideas from a creative standpoint come from kernels of truth. And if you can't find that kernel of truth about something, you can't do your job, you know? And sometimes we get clients and we think we believe in their product, and then you learn and you find out and maybe you don't so much, you know? So it's really, really important. And, you know, we walk a fine line with that because it is, you know, an economy, we're a business and we're about making money. But you can't just, you know, sell to sell. You got to have, you know, some passion to be able to do your job well. If you don't love it and you don't love and believe in it, I just don't think you're going to be able to do it well. Does anybody do something well that they don't like doing? No. That's about, that's about branding too. It's about believing in something and standing for something. So it all goes together. Kudos to you for being a freshman and coming to something like this. That's awesome. It says a lot about your brand. What else? Yeah.
My name's Jennifer Curtis. I'm a junior management major. We're talking about black and white resumes a lot. What are other ways, and I know you mentioned like social media and the blog side of that.
Yep.
The black Americans that make themselves stand out. But besides for social media, what would you consider to not be black and white?
Not to be not a black and white resume. I think the best way to do it is to build a personal connection and not rely on that. I mean, honestly, you can slug your information into Monster, and sometimes there's programs, we have applicant tracking systems that rip all the information out of your resume and put it in some database that's in some table somewhere, so it's just data in fields, right? So if you don't want to rely on that and you want to do something different, then I think starting with a personal connection is going to be your best way to go. I do think Tumblr as a blog, there's also a lot of like little portfolio sites. Carbon Made is one. And again, it's like built for designers and stuff, but you don't have to be a designer to have a portfolio. Carbon Made's a good one. I think Coraflat has a good one. Behance has them. So you can put stuff up there. SlideShare, which is sort of like a PowerPoint, a YouTube for PowerPoints. That's an elevator pitch right there. SlideShare, it's a YouTube for PowerPoints. So something like that is good to get any projects or anything you do out there, and you can send links to those along with your resume. But best way is to build a personal connection and leverage that. But don't just do that. Again, do all of those things. That's what we mean by everything matters. Don't just do one, do them all, because it's gonna stand out. I tell you, 99% of the stuff we get is just it's a resume. I don't care about a resume. I really don't. It doesn't say who you are and what your brand is. It's a piece of paper, right? I would hate to feel like my brand was a piece of paper. So do all of that stuff.
I'm interested on the senior college management. Kind of piggybacking off what you just said, when it comes to networking, which do you think is more important? To leave an impression on the person you just met, or have them leave an impression on you? Would you rather they remember you or you remember them?
Which one am I?
I guess that's what for me, I feel if I'm trying to get a job, I want to leave an impression on you, but I also want to forget who you are in the future.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it definitely works both ways. So you're going to want to leave an impression on me, and honestly, I'm going to want to leave an impression on you, right? Like, it's not just about you selling us. And I tell people that flat out when we interview. It's not just like me evaluating you. It's you evaluating me. Do I want to work for this guy? So, think about that. When you're networking and you're shaking hands, look them in the eye and say, do I want to work there? Because it's not just, us evaluating you guys. You guys evaluate us. So, I think it goes both ways. It's important. It's a good point. Because we might not, start out in a relationship, but down the road, you never know what happens. In our business, the average lifespan of a CMO is 18 months. 18 months. They can CMOs faster than anything. But if you're a CMO and you make them happy at one company and they get fired and they go to Lowe's or Home Depot, I'm glad I knew you, and I'm glad we had a good relationship where, when you were here. So, yeah, great question. What else?
I'm Lauren. I'm a junior accounting major, and I would like to know, right out of college, how did you differentiate yourself, and what was your personal story?
All right. So I will tell you that I just got really, really, really lucky. I was in the ELE program, and one of the great things about that class is they invited business leaders to come talk with us. And Joe Erwin, who's the Erwin in Erwin-Penland, came and he spoke to our class. And if you ever get a chance to meet him, he's a super charismatic guy. And you kind of listen to him and you want to go work for him, right? So I made an introduction, and it really went from there. I got an interview. I leveraged the fact that I knew him, and he had a participatory role in the program. So I think he wanted to see it succeed. So he was willing to give, me a shot, even though I probably, was just another person. And I had some interviews. And there wasn't even a position open for me at the time at Erwin-Penland. And I was living in a little single-room apartment over in Central behind the clock. I don't even know if it's still there. And actually, I had some job offers I was telling you about that I turned down. And one day I was actually back home for a visit. I got a call. And he called me back in and said, hey, we just won a piece of new business. It was working with Michelin. And we need a junior account person to come work on what they called the data books, which were 200-page tire specification manuals that were charts and charts and charts and charts of information with legal copy at the bottom. And my job was to get all the data out of Excel, get them to the designers so they could put them in the charts, and then I got to proofread 200-page books day in and day out. And I had one client who was so meticulous, like Michelin, they're the quintessential engineering company. She made us line up all the decimals. So there's one column, and it was like the rim width or something like that had, decimal point. It was like 7.0 to 8.0. And I would sit there with a ruler on every page and line up the decimals. And so, as you could see, I was sort of anxious to do something different. So I said, hey, we really need to be doing this digital stuff, because I sort of hated doing the data books. And that's honestly where it started. I got lucky. I made, I think, a good choice, but I just sort of, lucked into it. I was reading through some program manuals, found ELE, got into the class, made the connection, and then did something with it. And I credit, Erwin-Penland for being the type of organization that lets people kind of do their own thing and grow. So.
Last question? Any more?
Yeah.
My name's Garrett Zansky, and I was management major. I was curious, do you think it's easier to repair a damaged corporate brand or a personal brand? For example, BP oil spill versus Tiger Woods.
Let me think about that one, because I don't know that I have a good answer for you. I don't know that there is really an answer for that. I don't know that one's easier or harder to repair. But maybe a personal brand is tougher, Maybe a personal brand, actually, the more I think about it. Does anybody remember Firestone tires? Ones that blew up on Ford Explorers? You know what one of the best-selling, fastest-growing tire companies is right now? Bridgestone. And it used to be Bridgestone Firestone. So what they do, can the Firestone, they got Bridgestone, they're good to go, right? So there's ways around it when you're a company. When you're Tiger Woods, there's not a whole lot, to change. And I tell you, like, in terms of your personal brand and who you are, when you're in business, if you burn a bridge, it can really come back to bite you. Our director of client services at Erwin-Penland, Alan Bosworth, he likes to say, we like to kiss our clients till their lips bleed. Shower them with customer service, because that builds our personal brand, and they know wherever they are, they can call us and we'll help them. And that's valuable. And we don't want to do anything to damage that, because the second you burn them, they're never going to trust you again. So maybe a personal brand is harder to repair. But Is that it?
Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you guys.